What's up, YouTube? We're a couple of cunts, we're in the countryside, we're talking about the Olympics. 2012 Olympics is done now, over.
Well, the main Olympics are, Paralympics is still to come.
Yeah, I'm guessing it's probably not going to get all the coverage on the telly that
this is very true. It's like, oh yeah, sorry, you're missing a leg. You're not going to get as much TV coverage.
I actually heard something really terrible, that because the tickets to the actual Olympic events were so expensive, like you had to have a ticket just to go into the stadium, even if you didn't give a shit about any of the sports. So what people have done is bought tickets to the Paralympics, which are much cheaper, and then they're just going to look around the Olympic stadium. Or they're not actually going to go and watch any of the events. The Paralympics is there. People who've got to put even more effort into these events, and people just don't give a shit. It's probably the fact that the Paralympics are missing the glamour and the hype of the... I mean, it's obvious by this point, I think, that neither of us should really care about the Olympics. I mean, we mentioned it in the sports episode that we don't give a shit about sports. We've also made it perfectly clear that we're not all that patriotic. I mean, I was fully prepared not to care about the Olympics right up until the opening ceremony.
The opening ceremony did impress me quite a lot.
I was lying in bed reading the latest Stephen King book, and I just kept getting tweets through of people going, this has happened, this has happened, this is amazing.
Oh yeah, Facebook
60-foot Voldemort, oh my god. Well, the thing that actually sparked me off first was when people said Frank Turner had played. I was like, okay, now I'm interested. And so, yeah, that was what started me. I watched the opening ceremony. Yeah, fucking impressive. I mean, hats off to Danny Boyle. It could have been crap and cheesy, but yeah, it was really good. People were saying, oh, how are we going to top Beijing? Well, they didn't have their monarch jumping out of a helicopter with James Bond,
I was going to say, that pretty much sold it for me, because as soon as you see him appearing there, like you see Daniel Craig enter, I'm sort of thinking, is that who I think it is? And it looks on him, it's sort of like, oh, I wonder if he's there as Daniel Craig or if he's going to be as James Bond. And he's James Bond, you're sort of thinking, wait, no, this isn't going to happen. Then the Queen is actually there. It's like, what? No! Brilliant!
Yeah, it was, I mean, yeah, proper good. I mean, the things that stood out were obviously that. The NHS sequence with Mike Oldfield and, like, all the kids jumping on their beds and a million Mary Poppinses coming down to save the day, which was, like, trippy as balls and, like, really quite nightmarish.
You know when Kenneth Branagh was dressed up quite nicely?
Oh, as Isambard Kingdom Brunel, yeah.
At any point did you sort of think he looked like his character from Wild Wild West, Loveless? If he had the facial hair and was dressed sort of like in white, I think he was in white and black for the most part of that film, it's like he almost could have been a bit like that.
But he had legs.
Well,
Loveless would have to have done the opening Paralympics, yeah.
See, that would be one of those, oh, do you get a guy with no legs to sort of, you know, from Wild Wild West to open the Paralympics? That's a difficult one to call.
No, the thing about Kenneth Branagh that got me is that the ignorant Americans thought he was Abe Lincoln. Yeah. It's like, why the fuck would Abe Lincoln be involved in the opening ceremony of the UK Olympics?
And why would you get like one of the most typical British people to play him? Why?
It was really weird because as the opening ceremony was impressive and everything, but it also really did make me feel patriotic and gave me a massive sense of national pride, and that's a big thing for me because most of the time I couldn't give a shit. But yeah, closing ceremony wasn't up to much.
I would like to make an informed judgment on it. I can't. The only thing I got really picked up on, everybody started bitching about George Michael because rather than playing a well-known song, he played his new one. This sort of general consensus, like, you don't turn up to something that important and try and plug your new single. You play something that's going to please the crowd.
Well, it's just for all the spectacle of the opening ceremony, you know, the fucking Industrial Revolution and shit. What did you have? I mean, there were a couple of good things. I mean, Stomp were there, and they're always a laugh. Elbow played, they were good. There was Jessie J, like, tons of Jessie J, performing with Queen. I mean, the fuck.
Queen do seem to be a bit weird. I mean, okay, I like Brian May, the fact he's quite open, but he's performed with people like Dappy. He performed with some fucking boy band back in the 90s. He's worked with quite a few people who, if you're really trying to keep a proper rock star image, you know, you probably wouldn't perform with. Up to him what he does. I mean, he's sold enough millions of albums to guarantee himself fame forever. But he does seem to perform with some questionable characters. I knew we did quite well the other year in Beijing, but I was sort of thinking, you know what, I'm not that keen on us, you know, as sports go. But we did really fucking well on the medals table, considering like how big we are compared to some of the other countries. To come third is quite bloody impressive.
Well, we were never going to top China or the US.
China or USA are always good. It's always between those two for the top.
But I mean, when it was between like us and France and Russia, and then like Germany and that, it's like it could go either way. But yeah, I was actually fully impressed. I mean, it was. I saw the first couple of gold medals we won purely by coincidence. We were just sat in the living room, the Olympics were on, and it was the rowing, and we just, I wasn't even paying attention at first. I can't remember what I was doing. I was reading a comic, I was on the laptop or something. And I was like, our girls are actually doing quite well. And then when Heather and Helen did it, and they were doing all their, accepted the gold medals and that, I was like, fuck yeah, Britain, that's a thing. And then I think it was either that day or the next day, Wigo won the gold in the cycling. And I was like,
I quite like that guy because I used to have sideburns like him.
you wish you had sideburns like
They weren't quite like that, but I did used to have a fairly large set of sideburns on me when I was about 17.
I think it's hilarious how Greece always do so badly though.
Yeah, and it's totally that.
Well,
That's
because it's not the sort of like old school Olympics where, you know, you probably end up killing a man at the end of it.
And chariot racing.
When we brought the Olympics back though, back in whenever it was 1900 odd or 1800 odd, something like that, like the Olympic sports then were a lot different to what they are now. There was really stupid events like town planning, painting, poetry, all this stuff like this. Like, how do you even fucking quantify those? Because, you know, I know there's some of them, you know, you've got to judge, like, you know, the
gymnastics and shit.
Yeah, the gymnastics, or when you're prancing around a horse or something like that, which, you know, isn't just a case of the fastest. But, you know, with a sprint, it's like the guy that gets over the finish line first gets the gold.
Bolt, generally.
Yeah, generally him. Even in races, he's not in. He just turns up, runs on the track. He's like, I'm not even trying, bitches. And yeah, but no, there's stuff like, how do you fucking give a gold medal out for painting?
Well, I assume it would be the same as the gymnastics and the dressage and that, where they have a panel of judges, and not without controversy the thing in it, because like there's the badminton disqualifications.
China and South Korea, I believe.
There were 4 teams. 2 of them were Korean, I think. One was Chinese. I can't remember the other one. It was another sort of East Asian. But yeah, I actually saw some of the footage of those matches, and it was pitifully awful.
It got explained. Something I read though, they were playing it tactically for the fact that if they didn't do that well in that match, they would have been guaranteed an easier semi-final, which would have then meant they're more likely to be in the final, which you can kind of understand why they did it, but at the same time it's not within the spirit of the Olympics.
I was going to say, I get the motivation, it's just the fact they did it, and it was so fucking obvious. If you're going to be shit, at least be shit like we were in the fencing. So I watched us against Italy, and it was just embarrassingly bad. We were literally on the back foot for 90% of the time, and every time we went for a thrust, they literally just went... just getting past us, and it was like, we'd lost like 42-12 or something like that. It was just atrocious.
Speaking about countries from Asia again, there was it is old news now, which I'm sure everybody knows about, but to bring it up again is the whole debacle with the Koreans, yeah, the North Koreans, or Democratic People's Republic of Korea, I think is their preferred name, excuse me, came out to play football, and they put the South Korean, or Korean People's Republic or whatever they're called, showing a little bit of ignorance there, they put their flag on it, which of course at that point Burrows like, oh, just walked off the field and had to ask them really nicely to come back on.
That was a retarded move on the Olympic Commission's part. I mean, they might as well have just had Iran coming out and showing Israel's flag or something.
They still didn't compete against each other this year. I still don't think that an Israeli athlete has competed against Iranian athletes. They're still not really talking, those guys.
No, well, yeah, they got beef. Speaking of that, there was that team that fucking went missing. What was it, the Congo or something?
The Democratic Republic of Congo, about 12, 14 of their athletes have now, they've not gone back, basically. They've disappeared from the village. And some of them did it, okay, only a couple of days ago once they'd done all the events, but some of them did it before they even went to an event. It's just like, oh yeah, we're turning up to run. It's like, probably just some really fat guy.
Yeah, they did.
They
fucking ran,
some really fat guy just turns up at the airport and says, I'm a 100 metres team. It's probably a passport check looking. It's like, I know for a fact you're going to fuck this off. It's just like, oh, screw this, I'll go work in a takeaway.
Athletes don't always do what you're expecting, because it's like we were watching the gymnastics at Neil's house, and it was like largely burly blokes, that Christian dude who's like a fucking brick shit house, and just doing all this fancy flipping and then getting to the corner of the mat and just sort of going... It's just like, you know, you see these massive dudes who you think would punch right through your face, and they're just doing these like graceful moves and everything like a ballerina.
There was some, I don't mean to be harsh, there were some quite funny fails in gymnastics as well, just when people face plant or fall off and stuff. It does take a lot of skill to get that. I've got every respect for them. But there's nothing better than watching someone trying to do something really, really complicated. It means being,
well, we were watching the pommel horse, and some of the dismounts on that were really shocking.
we were just sat there watching it. It's just like, oh, he's overcooked that. Oh, that's bad. So like we can fucking judge. So like, watching us come up, we'd end up in the fucking, I don't know, media bit just impaled on a camera. Like, oh, how many points do I get for this?
But I mean, to be fair, I bet a lot of bitches were loving the gymnasts.
Oh, they didn't have any problem getting laid at all.
I don't think anyone does, to be fair.
I do wonder like how many teams of Swedish women Usain Bolt went through, or anybody who just want to. I'm just picturing like someone like Tom Daley at the minute with the amount of coverage he's getting. He probably just sort of walked into the backstage area, put his bronze medal around his neck, took his top and trousers off, and just stood there, just like, attach yourselves to me. I will do with you as I please.
Yeah, Michael Phelps was probably swimming through bitches the whole time. Also, that we were watching the archery, and there was like this little tiny Korean lady. She must have been 5 foot at the most. The bow was taller than her, but she was like a fucking deadly assassin, like getting 9 and 10 points every time she fired. It was fucking unreal. It's when they start cross-pollinating sports, it's going to be good. It's like fencing versus shooting. It's not going to be hard to see how
that would be quite funny, actually, having not necessarily fencing, but having sort of like having a knife fighter versus someone who can fast draw, having them under 21 feet, and like seeing if you can settle the argument of knife versus gun. I'm just thinking of start a basketball right now. You know, when we just sort of start putting sports together, that would be amazing.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
You know what sport they need to bring back? They need to bring back slam ball. There's a good correct article every week about sports that aren't in the Olympics but need to be. There's this crazy Japanese sport where you just basically run it at enemy team with guys like there's a pole with a guy on the top of it. You've got like 70 guys defending it. The other team has like 70 guys and they have to knock them off. It's basically just Japanese people running at each other fighting.
They need to introduce that in the next Olympics for sure. We've been a couple of cunts in the countryside. If you enjoyed this video, like, favourite, subscribe, share. Check us out on Facebook and Twitter. If you didn't enjoy it, you may be a Jessie J fan. Jump off a bridge. Feel free to suggest a topic for us to talk about in a future episode, and we'll see you next time.
Just because the regular Olympics are finished doesn't mean you should stop watching. Go on, I dare you, watch the Paralympics. It's no different than watching Jessie J in concert.